I'm Sarah, 34, and I thought I knew my family until last Christmas morning changed everything forever. My 8-year-old daughter Emma had spent weeks making a handmade photo album for her Uncle Jake, my younger brother. When he unwrapped it, he sneered, "Cheap, worthless trash," and tossed it aside like garbage. Emma's face crumbled. That moment shattered 28 years of sibling loyalty and revealed a truth that would destroy our family dynamics permanently. What happened next would teach Jake that some actions have consequences he never saw coming. Before we dive into this family revenge story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. If you've ever dealt with toxic family members who hurt the people you love most, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama that'll make your jaw drop. Trust me, you won't believe how this Christmas disaster turned into the most satisfying revenge story ever. Growing up, Jake and I had always been close despite our 6-year age gap. I was the protective older sister who defended him through school bullying, helped him with homework, and celebrated every small victory. When our parents divorced when I was 16 and Jake was 10, I became more of a mother figure than a sister. I worked part-time jobs to help buy his school supplies, drove him to soccer practice, and made sure he never felt abandoned. Jake had always been charming but entitled. Our mom spoiled him relentlessly, calling him her miracle baby after struggling with fertility issues before his birth. Dad showered him with expensive gifts to compensate for the divorce guilt. I watched as Jake learned to manipulate both parents, playing them against each other for maximum benefit. Still, I made excuses for his behavior, thinking he'd mature with time. When I got pregnant at 19 with Emma, Jake was surprisingly supportive. He helped me paint the nursery and even picked out stuffed animals for his future niece. Those early years were precious. Watching him interact with baby Emma, teaching her to walk, reading her bedtime stories, when I was exhausted from working 2 jobs as a single mom. But success changed Jake dramatically. After landing a high-paying tech job at 22, his entitled attitude amplified exponentially. He bought a luxury car, moved into an expensive downtown loft, and started treating service workers like dirt. Family dinners became uncomfortable as he bragged about his salary and made condescending comments about my modest lifestyle as a schoolteacher. The warning signs were everywhere, but I ignored them. Last Thanksgiving, he criticized the homemade meal I'd spent days preparing, suggesting I should have just ordered catering like normal people. When Emma proudly showed him her report card with straight A's, he barely glanced up from his phone, muttering, "Cool kid." I felt hurt, but told myself he was just stressed from work. Christmas planning had been especially difficult this year. Jake initially refused to come, claiming he had better things to do than sit around opening cheap presents. Only after Mom guilt-tripped him extensively did he agree to show up. He arrived 2 hours late, designer shopping bags in hand, acting like he was doing us all a tremendous favor. Emma had been excited for weeks about her special gift for Uncle Jake. She'd spent her allowance money buying a photo album and decorating it with stickers, drawings, and handwritten captions. Each page told a story of their relationship. Pictures from her birthday parties where he'd shown up, family vacations, silly selfies they'd taken together. She'd worked on it secretly every night after homework, carefully arranging photos and writing messages like "Best uncle ever" and "Thank you for always making me laugh." The night before Christmas, Emma had shown me the finished album with such pride. Her face glowed as she explained each page, pointing out inside jokes and shared memories. "Do you think Uncle Jake will really like it, Mommy?" she asked, clutching the album to her chest. I assured her that he'd love it because it came from her heart, made with so much love and effort. That Christmas morning started normally enough. We opened presents gradually, savoring each moment, as Emma squealed with delight over books, art supplies, and the bicycle she'd been hoping for. Jake sat somewhat removed, checking his expensive watch periodically and making passive-aggressive comments about the extended gift opening process. When Emma finally presented her carefully wrapped gift to Jake, her eyes sparkled with anticipation. She'd wrapped it herself in bright red paper with a giant golden bow, adding a handmade card that read, "For the best uncle in the world, from your biggest fan, Emma." She practically bounced with excitement as she handed it over, explaining how she'd made it extra special just for him. Jake's unwrapping was perfunctory, almost dismissive. He tore off the paper without reading the card, and when he saw the homemade photo album, his face immediately showed disappointment. He flipped through a few pages quickly, his expression growing more disgusted with each turn. The room fell silent as we all watched his reaction. Then came the words that changed everything: cheap, worthless trash. He said it loud enough for everyone to hear, tossing the album onto the coffee table like it was contaminated. I mean, seriously, Emma, this is just pictures glued into a book. Anyone could make this in 5 minutes. The devastation on Emma's face was immediate and heartbreaking. Her excited smile crumbled into confusion, then hurt, then crushing embarrassment. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stared at the discarded album, trying to process why her beloved uncle had just destroyed her proudest achievement. She looked around the room, desperately seeking someone to tell her this was just a misunderstanding. "But Uncle Jake," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I worked really hard on it. Look, there are pictures of us together, and I wrote stories about all our fun times." She reached for the album, hoping to show him the special details he'd missed. Jake pulled it away dismissively. "Kid, when you're older you'll understand that effort doesn't matter if the result is still junk. Maybe ask your mom to buy real presents next time instead of wasting everyone's time with this crafty nonsense." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom sat frozen, clutching her coffee mug. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably, but said nothing. Emma fled to her room sobbing, and I sat there watching my daughter's heart break, while my brother continued scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. That moment crystallized years of growing resentment and disappointment. This wasn't just typical bratty behavior, this was cruelty directed at an innocent child who worshipped him. As I listened to Emma crying in her room, something fundamental shifted inside me. The protective instinct I'd always felt for Jake transferred entirely to my daughter, and I realized that blood relations don't excuse toxic behavior. Jake had finally crossed a line he couldn't uncross, and he had no idea what he'd just unleashed. After comforting Emma and putting her down for a nap, I spent the rest of Christmas Day in a cold fury. Jake had left shortly after his gift-opening display, claiming he had plans with people who appreciate quality. His casual dismissal of Emma's devastation was the final straw. I'd spent years making excuses for his increasingly toxic behavior, but watching him crush my daughter's spirit with such deliberate cruelty awakened something fierce and protective within me. That evening, while cleaning up the wrapping paper and trying to salvage what remained of our Christmas celebration, I found myself staring at Emma's discarded photo album. Each page represented hours of careful work, love, and excitement. She'd even written little stories about their relationship. "This is when Uncle Jake taught me to throw a football, and Uncle Jake always gives the best hugs." The innocence and pure affection in those pages made his rejection even more heartbreaking. Emma barely spoke for the rest of the day. When she did interact, she kept asking what she'd done wrong and whether Uncle Jake still loved her. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that some people are just cruel? I found myself lying, telling her that Uncle Jake was having a bad day and didn't mean what he said. But deep down I knew this wasn't just a bad day. This was who Jake had become. The next morning I called Mom to discuss what had happened. Her response was predictably disappointing but not surprising. "You know how Jake is when he's stressed from work," she said, using the same excuse she'd been making for years. "He didn't mean to hurt Emma's feelings. Maybe you should teach her that not everyone appreciates handmade gifts. Some people prefer store-bought things." I was stunned by her victim-blaming response. Instead of acknowledging Jake's cruelty, she was suggesting that Emma should change her loving nature to accommodate his toxic behavior. "Mom," he called an 8-year-old's heartfelt gift worthless trash, and humiliated her in front of everyone. "This isn't about gift preferences. This is about basic human decency." "Don't be so dramatic, Sarah. Jake has always been direct about his opinions. Maybe this will teach Emma that the real world isn't all sunshine and rainbows." That conversation revealed how deeply embedded the family dysfunction had become. Jake's behavior was normalized and excused while his victims were blamed for being too sensitive. I realized that confronting him directly would be pointless. He'd just deny, deflect, and play the victim while Mom and Dad made excuses for him. Instead, I decided to conduct some research. If Jake thought he could treat my daughter like garbage without consequences, he was about to learn otherwise. I started by looking into his social media presence, which painted a very interesting picture of his character. His Instagram was filled with photos of expensive meals, luxury purchases, and condescending captions about living your best life and surrounding yourself with quality people. The comments section revealed a pattern of him dismissing anyone who disagreed with him or couldn't afford his lifestyle. He'd responded to a former coworker's congratulations on a promotion with, "Maybe now you can finally afford to eat somewhere decent." When a high school friend shared photos from her wedding, Jake commented, "Budget wedding vibes. Hope the marriage lasts longer than the decorations." Digging deeper, I discovered that Jake had been posting reviews on various platforms, consistently giving one-star ratings to local businesses with scathing comments about service quality. He'd destroyed a family-owned restaurant's reputation by claiming they served food fit only for people with no taste buds or standards. The review was completely disproportionate to any reasonable complaint and seemed designed purely to inflict maximum damage. His LinkedIn profile was equally revealing. Jake portrayed himself as a results-driven professional who refuses to accept mediocrity. His posts were filled with humble brags about his salary, dismissive comments about coworkers who lack ambition, and pseudo-inspirational content about cutting toxic people out of your life, which apparently included anyone who found it couldn't match his income level. But the most disturbing discovery came when I found his Reddit account. Jake was active in several forums where he bragged about manipulating service workers, getting people fired for minor mistakes, and putting people in their place when they annoyed him. One post detailed how he'd gotten a waitress fired because she'd forgotten to bring extra napkins. Another described how he'd reported a janitor to building management for taking too long in the bathroom, resulting in the man losing his job. The Reddit posts revealed a pattern of deliberate cruelty disguised as having standards. Jake genuinely enjoyed hurting people he considered beneath him, and he felt justified in doing so because of his financial success. Reading his posts, I realized that his treatment of Emma wasn't an aberration, it was consistent with his character. I also discovered that Jake had been lying to the family about various aspects of his life. His claims about receiving a promotion were exaggerated. He'd received a lateral transfer with a minor salary increase that he'd inflated by 30%. His expensive lifestyle was largely funded by credit card debt, not the financial success he claimed. His luxury apartment was actually a studio that he'd photographed from flattering angles to appear larger. Most importantly, I learned about his workplace behavior through his own posts. Jake frequently bragged about undermining coworkers, taking credit for their ideas, and sabotaging projects to make others look incompetent. He saw himself as playing strategic games to advance his career, but his posts revealed someone who was genuinely hated by his colleagues. One post particularly caught my attention. Jake had described manipulating a coworker named Maria into missing an important presentation by giving her wrong information about the meeting time. Maria had apparently been up for the same promotion Jake wanted, and his sabotage had damaged her professional reputation. He'd written about it gleefully, calling it survival of the fittest in the corporate jungle. This research phase took several weeks, but it was crucial for understanding who Jake had become and how to approach the situation strategically. I wasn't just dealing with a spoiled brat who'd hurt my daughter's feelings. I was dealing with someone who had made cruelty into a lifestyle choice. Emma, meanwhile, was slowly recovering from the Christmas incident, but I could see lasting damage. She'd started second-guessing her creative projects, asking if they were good enough or too babyish. She'd stopped mentioning Uncle Jake entirely, and when family members asked about him, she'd changed the subject quickly. Watching my confident creative daughter become uncertain and self-doubting because of Jake's cruelty solidified my resolve. He'd declared war on an innocent child, and now it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. 3 weeks after Christmas, an opportunity presented itself that I could never have planned. Emma and I were at the grocery store when I ran into Maria Rodriguez, a woman I'd met briefly at a neighborhood barbecue months earlier. She looked exhausted and stressed, pushing her cart mechanically while her 2 young children tried to get her attention. "Maria, is everything okay?" I asked, genuinely concerned by her appearance. She looked up, trying to force a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, hi Sarah, well, I've been better. Work has been really challenging lately." Something in her tone triggered my memory of Jake's Reddit posts about sabotaging a coworker named Maria. The timing seemed too coincidental to ignore. What kind of work do you do? I asked carefully. Tech consulting at Morrison Digital. I thought I was doing well, but apparently I've been making some serious mistakes. My supervisor thinks I'm becoming unreliable. Her voice cracked slightly. I might lose my job and I'm the sole provider for my kids. My heart rate accelerated. Morrison Digital was Jake's company. This had to be the Maria from his posts. That's terrible. What kind of mistakes? Missing important meetings, submitting reports with wrong data, failing to follow proper procedures. Except, I swear I've been doing everything right. It's like someone's been giving me incorrect information, but that sounds paranoid, right? She laughed bitterly. My colleagues probably think I'm losing my mind. I felt sick thinking about Jake's gleeful posts describing exactly this scenario. He'd systematically destroyed this woman's career for his own advancement while she blamed herself for his sabotage. Maria wasn't just a name in a Reddit post, she was a real person with children to support, and Jake was actively ruining her life for sport. Maria, this might sound strange, but do you work with someone named Jake Collins? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Her expression immediately darkened. Jake, yeah, he's... Actually, now that you mention it, a lot of my recent problems started around the time he joined our team, but he's been really helpful, always volunteering to assist with projects and offering advice. Why do you ask? He's my brother, I said quietly, watching her face carefully. The grocery store suddenly felt too small and too public for this conversation. Maria's expression shifted from confusion to something approaching recognition. Your brother, but he said. He mentioned having a sister who was a struggling single mom with no ambition. He made it sound like you barely stayed in touch. That stung, but it also confirmed what I'd suspected about how Jake portrayed me to others. Maria, I think we need to talk privately. Are you free for coffee sometime this week? 2 days later, we met at a quiet cafe while Emma was at school. I'd spent those days carefully considering how much to reveal and how to approach the situation ethically. I couldn't directly share Jake's Reddit posts without admitting to stalking his online presence, but I could guide Maria toward discovering the truth herself. Maria, before we talk, I need you to know that I had no idea about any workplace issues until you mentioned them. I'm not here to defend my brother or make excuses for him. I'm here because I think you deserve to know what's really happening. I started by sharing the Christmas incident with Emma, watching Maria's expression change as she recognized the cruelty I described. That's horrible, she whispered. I can't imagine treating a child that way. But what does this have to do with work? It shows his character. Jake has become someone who enjoys hurting people he sees as beneath him. He's convinced himself that his success justifies any behavior. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Maria, have you ever documented the advice or information Jake has given you? She shook her head. Most of it was verbal. He'd stop by my desk or catch me in the hallway with updates about meeting times or project requirements. I trusted him because he seemed so knowledgeable and helpful. What if that helpfulness was actually sabotage disguised as assistance? Maria sat back in her chair, processing this possibility. But why would he do that? What would he gain? The promotion you were both competing for. Jake doesn't see colleagues as teammates. He sees them as obstacles to eliminate. Over the next hour, I helped Maria piece together the timeline of her workplace problems. Every helpful interaction with Jake had preceded a professional disaster. The meeting she'd missed because he'd told her it was rescheduled. It had happened as originally planned, and her absence had looked unprofessional. The data he'd corrected in her reports. It had been wrong, making her look incompetent. The new procedures he'd explained. They were outdated policies that violated current protocols. He's been gaslighting me, Maria realized, anger replacing the confusion in her voice. I've been questioning my own competence while he systematically destroyed my reputation. How could I have been so naive? Because you're a decent person who assumes others are too. Jake counts on that. Maria pulled out her phone and started scrolling through her work emails. I've been documenting everything recently because I was afraid of making more mistakes. Let me see if I can find patterns. Within minutes, she'd identified multiple instances where Jake's helpful advice had led to problems. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling when viewed as a whole pattern rather than isolated incidents. Sarah, this is incredible, but it's also scary. If Jake has been doing this deliberately, he's dangerous. What if he escalates when he realizes I'm onto him? That question had been weighing on my mind as well. Jake wasn't just casually cruel, he was calculated and strategic. Exposing his workplace behavior might protect Maria, but it could also make him more vindictive toward me and Emma. We need to be smart about this, I said. Direct confrontation won't work because he'll just deny everything and play the victim. But if we can document his behavior and expose it properly. I want to fight back, Maria said firmly. Not just for me but for anyone else he might be targeting. This isn't just about workplace competition. This is about someone who enjoys destroying people's lives. We spent another hour strategizing. Maria would start documenting every interaction with Jake, preferably with witnesses or written follow-up emails. She'd also reach out to other colleagues who might have experienced similar issues. Meanwhile, I would work on my own approach to Jake's behavior. But as we talked, I realized something important. This wasn't just about getting justice for Maria or protecting Emma anymore. Jake had become genuinely dangerous in his narcissistic cruelty. He was actively destroying people's livelihoods and emotional well-being for personal gain, and he felt completely justified in doing so. Driving home from our meeting, I felt a mixture of determination and apprehension. He helped me paint the nursery and even picked out stuffed animals for his future niece. Those early years were precious, watching him interact with baby Emma, teaching her to walk, reading her bedtime stories, when I was exhausted from working 2 jobs as a single mom. But success changed Jake dramatically. After landing a high-paying tech job at 22, his entitled attitude amplified exponentially. The question was no longer whether to take action but how to ensure that when Jake finally faced consequences for his behavior, those consequences would be as thorough and devastating as the damage he'd inflicted on others. Emma deserved better than an uncle who treated her love like trash. Maria deserved justice for the systematic sabotage of her career. And everyone in Jake's orbit deserved protection from his calculated cruelty. This wasn't going to be a simple family confrontation anymore. This was war, and Jake had no idea it was coming. Jake had spent years building his image as a successful, charming young professional, while hiding his true nature from family members who might hold him accountable. But now I had allies and evidence, and most importantly, I had a clear understanding of exactly who my brother had become. The next 2 weeks became a careful dance of information gathering and strategic planning. Maria proved to be an invaluable ally, methodically documenting every interaction with Jake while reaching out to other colleagues who might have similar experiences. What we discovered was even worse than I'd imagined. Jake wasn't just targeting Maria, he was running multiple sabotage campaigns simultaneously. Maria's investigation revealed that Jake had been documenting these performance issues in detailed emails to management, positioning himself as a concerned colleague who was reluctantly reporting problems. He'd built a paper trail that made his victims look incompetent while making himself appear professional and observant. He's not just sabotaging us, Maria explained during one of our coffee meetings. He's creating evidence to support his narrative that we're all failing independently. It's sociopathic. Meanwhile, I was conducting my own investigation into Jake's personal finances. His social media boasting about wealth had made me curious about the reality of his situation. A conversation with our cousin who worked in banking revealed that Jake's credit score was terrible and he'd been denied for several loans recently. The expensive lifestyle was a carefully constructed facade built on debt and deception. I also reached out to some of Jake's ex-girlfriends through mutual friends. The stories I heard were disturbing but unsurprising. Rachel, who dated him for 8 months, described how he'd gradually become controlling and emotionally abusive. He'd criticize everything about me, my clothes, my friends, my job, but always in this concerned, helpful way, she explained. By the time we broke up, I felt like I couldn't do anything right. Another ex-Jennifer shared how Jake had sabotaged her job interview by calling her potential employer and claiming she had reliability issues based on fabricated incidents. I only found out months later when the hiring manager mentioned the concerning reference call. Jake had pretended to be looking out for the company while destroying my opportunity. These revelations painted a picture of someone whose cruelty extended far beyond family dynamics or workplace competition. Jake was systematically damaging everyone around him, while maintaining a facade of success and respectability. Emma thankfully was beginning to recover from the Christmas incident. Her teacher had noticed some changes in her confidence and creativity, so I'd arranged for a few counseling sessions to help her process the rejection and understand that other people's cruelty reflects their character, not her worth. Watching her rebuild her self-esteem strengthened my resolve to ensure Jake faced consequences for his actions. The breakthrough came when Maria discovered Jake's digital footprint at work. Their IT department had policies requiring employees to use company devices for all work-related communications, which meant Jake's sabotage activities were documented in corporate systems. Maria's friend in IT mentioned that Jake frequently accessed other people's project files and sent emails from shared computers, leaving digital breadcrumbs of his interference. "Sarah, we have him," Maria said excitedly during our third week of investigation. "The IT logs show Jake accessing my files right before every major mistake I made. He was literally changing my work and then documenting the errors as performance issues." We now had evidence of workplace sabotage, a pattern of personal relationship abuse, financial deception, and a clear motive for his behavior toward Emma. She represented the same inferior people he'd been targeting everywhere else in his life. But Jake was about to hand us the perfect opportunity for justice. That Friday, Emma came home from school with an invitation to her class's upcoming family heritage presentation. Each student was supposed to bring a family member to share stories about their background and values. Emma had initially been excited, but then her face fell. "I want to ask Uncle Jake because he's good at talking to people, but I don't think he'll want to come. He said my last present was worthless trash, so he probably thinks I'm worthless too." My heart broke hearing her internalize Jake's cruelty. "Emma, sweetheart, you are not worthless. Uncle Jake was wrong to say that about your beautiful gift. You're amazing, and anyone would be lucky to be part of your presentation." "Could you ask him, Mommy? Maybe if you ask instead of me, he'll say yes." I realized this was the perfect setup. Jake's narcissism wouldn't let him refuse an opportunity to be admired by a classroom of children and their parents. He'd see it as a chance to showcase his success and superiority, never suspecting that he was walking into a trap. "Of course I'll ask him. But Emma, I want you to understand that if Uncle Jake comes, he might not behave the way you hope he will. People don't always change just because we want them to." That evening I called Jake with the invitation. As predicted, his ego immediately engaged. "A presentation about family values. I suppose I could spare some time to inspire those kids. They probably don't get to meet many successful professionals." "That's very generous of you, Jake." "Emma will be so excited. The presentation is next Friday at 2 p.m. "Perfect. I'll take a long lunch and grace them with some real-world wisdom. These kids need to understand what success actually looks like." After hanging up, I immediately called Maria. "It's happening next Friday. Jake's going to expose himself in front of a room full of parents, teachers, and children. Are you ready for phase 2? "More than ready. I've been waiting my whole career for someone like Jake to finally face consequences." "What do you need me to do?" The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Jake's narcissism and cruelty would be his own downfall. We just needed to create the right conditions for him to reveal his true character to the people who mattered most. Next Friday would be the day Jake discovered that karma isn't just a concept, it's a force of nature that eventually catches up with everyone. As I tucked Emma into bed that night, she whispered, "Mommy, do you think Uncle Jake will be proud of me at the presentation?" "Sweetheart, the most important thing is that you'll be proud of yourself. And I'll always be proud of you no matter what anyone else says." But privately I knew that by next Friday evening Emma would finally understand that Uncle Jake's opinion had never mattered at all. The week leading up to Emma's presentation was crucial for setting up what I'd started thinking of as Jake's reckoning. Every detail had to be perfect, because we'd only get one chance to expose his true character in a way that would have lasting consequences. Maria had been busy at work carefully documenting Jake's latest sabotage attempts while building alliances with other affected colleagues. She'd discovered that Jake's behavior had created an underground network of victims who'd been suffering in silence, each thinking they were the only target. David Chen revealed that Jake had been stealing his code and presenting it as original work. Lisa Thompson shared emails proving Jake had deliberately excluded her from client meetings to undermine her relationships. "He's made so many enemies," Maria reported during our planning session. "People are ready to come forward once they realize they're not alone. Jake's been playing these games for so long that he's gotten careless." The first phase of our plan involved Jake's workplace exposure. Maria had arranged for a routine IT security audit that would reveal Jake's unauthorized access to other employees' files and systems. The audit was scheduled for Monday morning, giving us the entire week to watch Jake squirm as his digital crimes came to light. But the real masterpiece would be Friday's presentation. I'd spent considerable time researching the other parents who'd be attending. The class included children whose parents worked in various professional fields, including 2 corporate lawyers, an HR director from a major company, and importantly, a tech journalist who specialized in workplace culture stories. Emma had been working diligently on her presentation, completely unaware of the larger drama surrounding it. "I can't wait for everyone to meet Uncle Jake. He's going to tell everyone about being successful and important." At 1:45 p.m., Jake arrived looking haggard and stressed, despite his expensive suit. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't been sleeping well, and his usually perfect appearance showed signs of strain. He surveyed the room of parents and children with his typical condescending expression, apparently seeing an audience of inferiors ready to be impressed by his superiority. Jake's presentation was positioned right after lunch, when parents would be most alert and engaged. I'd ensured that the tech journalist Amanda Stevens would be present for that specific time slot by mentioning that a successful young professional would be sharing insights about modern career success. On Monday morning, the IT audit began at Morrison Digital. Maria texted me regular updates as Jake's world started crumbling. He was called into a meeting with security and HR at 10 a.m. Came out looking pale and shaky. Word is spreading that they found evidence of data manipulation and unauthorized access. By Tuesday, Jake's sabotage network was fully exposed. The IT investigation had revealed a pattern of file tampering, email manipulation, and system abuse spanning several months. Jake's victims were finally vindicated as evidence proved their performance issues had been artificially created. David got his promotion back, Maria reported gleefully. Lisa's client relationships are being restored. And Jake, he's been suspended pending a full investigation. They're talking about potential criminal charges for corporate sabotage. Jake called me Wednesday evening, his voice tight with stress. "Sarah, work has been crazy lately. I might need to reschedule Emma's thing on Friday." "Oh no, Emma's been so excited about your presentation. She's been telling everyone that her successful uncle is coming to inspire her class. The other parents are really looking forward to meeting you." I could hear the conflict in his voice. His ego wanted the admiration and attention, but his current workplace crisis made public appearances risky. "I suppose I can still make it work. These kids deserve to hear from someone who's actually accomplished something." "That's wonderful, Emma will be thrilled. She's prepared such a beautiful presentation about family values and how much she admires you." The irony was perfect. Emma genuinely had prepared a loving tribute to Jake, completely unaware of his true character. Her innocent admiration would make his inevitable meltdown even more shocking to the audience. Thursday brought the final piece of our puzzle. Amanda Stevens, the tech journalist, published a preliminary article about workplace sabotage trends in corporate environments. His claims about receiving a promotion were exaggerated. He'd received a lateral transfer with a minor salary increase that he'd inflated by 30%. His expensive lifestyle was largely funded by credit card debt, not the financial success he claimed. His luxury apartment was actually a studio that he'd photographed from flattering angles to appear larger. Most importantly, I learned about his workplace behavior through his own posts. these perpetrators often maintain facades of helpfulness while inflicting calculated damage on their targets' careers. I shared the article with several parents who'd be attending Friday's presentation, framing it as interesting reading about modern workplace challenges. The seeds were planted for them to recognize Jake's behavior if he revealed his true character. Emma spent Thursday evening practicing her presentation one final time. "Mommy, do you think Uncle Jake will like what I say about him? I wrote that he taught me about working hard and being successful. I think he'll hear exactly what he needs to hear, sweetheart." Friday morning arrived with perfect timing. Jake texted that he'd be slightly late because of important meetings at work, undoubtedly more sessions with HR and legal teams investigating his sabotage activities. His stress level would be at maximum when he arrived at the school, making him more likely to lose control. I arrived early to help set up the classroom positioning chairs so that Jake would be front and center with nowhere to hide. Amanda Stevens was already there chatting with other parents about workplace culture and professional ethics, the perfect audience for what was about to unfold. Emma bounced with excitement as presentation time approached. "I can't wait for everyone to meet Uncle Jake. He's going to tell everyone about being successful and important." At 1:45 p.m., Jake arrived looking haggard and stressed, despite his expensive suit. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't been sleeping well, and his usually perfect appearance showed signs of strain. He surveyed the room of parents and children with his typical condescending expression, apparently seeing an audience of inferiors ready to be impressed by his superiority. "Sorry, I'm running behind," he announced loudly. "Important business calls, you understand. The corporate world doesn't stop for elementary school presentations." Several parents exchanged glances at his dismissive tone. Amanda Stevens pulled out her notebook, recognizing potential story material in Jake's attitude. Emma ran up to hug him, beaming with pride. "Uncle Jake, I'm so excited you're here. Wait until you hear what I wrote about our family values." Jake barely acknowledged her enthusiasm, instead scanning the room for what he perceived as the most important adults to impress. He had no idea that he was about to face the most devastating 15 minutes of his life. The trap was set. Jake had walked willingly into a room full of witnesses, stressed and unstable, ready to destroy himself in the most spectacular way possible. Emma began her presentation with the innocence and joy that made her so special. She spoke beautifully about family traditions, sharing stories about holiday celebrations, weekend adventures, and the importance of kindness and love. Her section about Jake was heartbreaking in its sincerity. She described him as the smartest person in our family, and someone who taught me that working hard makes you successful. The audience was charmed by Emma's pure enthusiasm, but I watched Jake's face carefully. Instead of pride or affection, he looked bored and slightly annoyed by her childish perspective on success. When she held up the rebuilt photo album, she'd recreated it after Christmas despite his cruel rejection. Jake visibly cringed. "And now," Emma announced happily, "Uncle Jake is going to tell you about being successful in business." Jake stood up, immediately commanding attention with his presence. But instead of the polished professional persona he usually projected, stress and ego combined into something much more toxic. "Thank you, Emma," he said dismissively, not even looking at her. "Kids have such simple ideas about success, don't they? Let me tell you what real achievement looks like in the adult world." He launched into a boastful monologue about his career, salary, and lifestyle, but the strain was showing. His comments became increasingly condescending toward both the children and other parents. "Most people settle for mediocrity," he declared, gesturing around the room. "They accept ordinary jobs, ordinary lives, ordinary everything. True success requires being willing to do whatever it takes to rise above the masses." Amanda Stevens was taking detailed notes, recognizing the narcissistic patterns she'd written about. Other parents were shifting uncomfortably as Jake's arrogance became more apparent. Then Emma, still beaming with admiration, asked the question that triggered everything. "Uncle Jake, can you tell everyone about our family values? Like how we always help each other and share what we have?" Jake's expression twisted with disgust. "Family values, Emma, that's kid stuff. Real success means surrounding yourself with people who can help you advance, not wasting time on sentiment and emotional nonsense." The room went completely silent. Parents stared in shock as Jake continued his toxic rant, apparently oblivious to his audience. "Take this photo album thing," he said, picking up Emma's rebuilt gift. Emma spent hours making this when she could have been learning valuable skills. Effort without results is just wasted time. In the business world, we call this kind of thinking participation trophy mentality. Emma's face began to crumble as she realized he was criticizing her beloved project again. But Jake wasn't finished. "Honestly, most of you probably encourage this mediocrity in your own children. You tell them, everyone's special and effort is what matters, but that's not how the real world works. The real world rewards results, efficiency, and strategic thinking. People who can't accept that truth get left behind." Amanda Stevens stopped pretending to take casual notes and started recording on her phone. Other parents were staring in horror as Jake revealed his complete lack of empathy or basic human decency. "Uncle Jake," Emma whispered, tears starting to form, "I thought you liked spending time with our family. Emma, you're a sweet kid, but you need to understand reality. I'm successful because I don't waste time on activities that don't benefit my goals. That includes family events, handmade gifts, and pretending that everyone's contributions are equally valuable." That's when Mrs. Peterson, the teacher, stepped forward. "Mr. Collins, I think there might be some miscommunication about our presentation goals." "No miscommunication," Jake interrupted aggressively. "I'm trying to give these children realistic preparation for adult life. Someone needs to tell them that the world doesn't care about their feelings or their crafts projects." The hostile edge in his voice was unmistakable now. Several parents moved protectively closer to their children as Jake's mask of professional polish completely disappeared. "Look around this room," he continued, his voice rising. "How many of you are actually successful? How many have achieved anything meaningful beyond producing children and attending school events? This is exactly the kind of small-minded environment that holds people back from real achievement." That's when David Chen's mother, who happened to be a corporate lawyer, spoke up. "Mr. Collins, are you the Jake Collins who was just suspended from Morrison Digital for workplace sabotage?" The question hit like a bomb. Jake's face went white as he realized he'd been recognized. There are legal complexities you wouldn't understand." "I understand corporate law quite well," she replied coolly. "I represent clients in employment disputes. Your case is already generating discussion in professional circles." Amanda Stevens stood up, her journalist instincts fully engaged. "Mr. Collins, would you care to comment on the allegations that you've been systematically undermining colleagues' careers through data manipulation and strategic misinformation?" The room erupted in whispered conversations as parents realized they were witnessing the public exposure of a corporate saboteur. Jake looked around desperately, finally understanding that his carefully constructed facade was crumbling in real time. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "You people don't understand the competitive nature of professional environments. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions to protect your own interests." "Like telling an 8-year-old that her loving gift is worthless trash?" I asked quietly, standing up from the back of the room. Jake spun around to face me, his expression shifting from panic to rage as he realized this had been orchestrated. "Sarah, what the hell is this? This is accountability, Jake. This is what happens when your cruelty finally catches up with you." Emma was crying now, finally understanding that her beloved uncle was not the person she'd believed him to be. Other children were staring in confusion and fear at the angry man who'd just insulted their families and destroyed their classmates' presentation. "You set me up, Jake," accused, his voice shaking with fury. "No, Jake. You set yourself up." "Sorry, I'm running behind," he announced loudly. "Important business calls, you understand. The corporate world doesn't stop for elementary school presentations." Several parents exchanged glances at his dismissive tone. Amanda Stevens pulled out her notebook, recognizing potential story material in Jake's attitude. Emma ran up to hug him, beaming with pride. "Uncle Jake, I'm so excited you're here. Wait until you hear what I wrote about our family values." The last image of him was being walked out of an elementary school in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled and his professional reputation destroyed forever. Emma sobbed in my arms as other parents offered comfort and support. Mrs. Peterson announced that Emma could redo her presentation another day, focusing on the family members who truly embodied the values she wanted to share. Amanda Stevens approached me afterward. "That was extraordinary. Would you be willing to discuss your experience with workplace sabotage victims? I think this story needs to be told." Within a week, Jake's story went viral. Stevens' article about corporate bullies and their personal behavior patterns featured our family's experience prominently. Morrison Digital fired Jake officially and issued public statements about their zero-tolerance policy for workplace harassment. Criminal charges were filed for corporate sabotage. But the best part, Maria got Jake's promotion. David Chen became team lead on the project Jake had tried to steal. Lisa Thompson's client relationships were restored and strengthened by the company's public support. Emma recovered beautifully once she understood that Uncle Jake's cruelty reflected his broken character, not her worth. She gave her family values presentation 3 weeks later, focusing on how real family members support each other through difficult times. You know what they say about karma? It doesn't always come quickly, but it comes completely. Jake thought he could treat people like disposable objects without consequences, but he learned that actions have weight in the universe. Every person he hurt, every relationship he damaged, every moment of cruelty he inflicted, came back to him in a single devastating afternoon. Sometimes justice feels abstract, but watching Jake's narcissistic mask slip away in front of 30 witnesses felt like the universe finally balancing its books. Emma learned that love and kindness have more power than cruelty and manipulation. Maria and her colleagues learned that standing together can defeat even the most calculated bullies. And me, I learned that protecting the people you love sometimes requires strategic patience, but that justice, when it finally arrives, can be absolutely beautiful. Have you ever had to deal with a toxic family member who thought they were untouchable? Someone who hurt the people you loved and expected to face no consequences? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Because everyone in EC has a Jake in their life. And everyone deserves to see karma do its work. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama that proves sometimes the universe really does deliver justice. Share this with anyone who needs to remember that toxic people eventually expose themselves. They just need the right stage. Thank you for joining me on this journey through family revenge and life lessons. And remember, kindness always wins in the end, especially when it's backed up by strategic thinking.